evening and welcome to Citizens Review. I'm Aaron Ferguson. This week's show was supposed to be with the Minister of State for Immigration, Mr. Branville McCartney. Now, it's hard to get in touch with Mr. McCartney, so the team here at Citizens Review followed our intuition. Mr. McCartney is known as a man of the people, so we went down to his constituency office, and believe it or not, there was Branville McCartney in the flesh, working hard for the people of Bamboo Town. We sat down, we met face to face, and scheduled an interview and agreed with a gentleman's handshake. Mr. McCartney promised me that he would do this interview with the handshake of a gentleman, that he would come, stand the test of the citizens, but unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I have to apologize to you tonight. Not because he didn't come, but because I allowed myself, with all the good sense and sensibility that my power give me, to fall victim to the word of a politician. Now, I know how the Bahamians feel, especially the people in Elizabeth, because all y'all just gone through this same situation. Although I heard some of y'all got some money, and some of y'all get fixed up, well. But that's besides the point. The point is, when the average Bahamian goes to that constituency office, which is where I was, and you have that face-to-face with your MP, you shake your hand and you tell them, help and hope is on the way. That's what the MPs tell you. And the next day, all of a sudden, you get that call, not from the MP, from the secretary. And at the 11th hour, she can call you and tell you all that help and hope that you were supposed to get, I know when that can reach. But I say to you, the Bahamian people watching, from all around the Bahama Islands, our viewers all over the world, especially those in the UK, those in the US, and those in Canada, watching right now on citizensreviewtv.com. I say to you, my grandmother from Bimini, and my grandpa is a Ferguson from Fox Hill. The two of my other grandparents from Long Island, and I ain't going nowhere. So, I'll tell you this. The reason this show is called Citizens Review is because the citizens will always stand. We will always have our say, and we will always ask the questions that need to be asked, whether or not the politicians, their cronies, and their henchmen understand it or agree with it. That is the standard our forefathers passed on to us, and that is the standard we will press forward with. The show must go on, and the citizenry must stand up. We are the citizens, and next we will run the review. We decided this show will include citizens as opposed to politicians. We have next with us two excellencies, the ambassador to CARICOM for the Bahamas, the youth ambassador, and also the youth ambassador for the Commonwealth. We'll be right back after these messages. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for staying with us. We have today two very important persons in the life of young people in the Bahamas. They are the Commonwealth Youth Ambassador, Ms. Alexander, and the CARICOM Youth Ambassador, Mr. DeMatthew Forbes. I prefer to call them excellencies. The ministry may disagree. Thank you very much for coming on the show today. I have a question about youth and youth leadership in the country. We've been watching all week as the Parliament goes on about the budget. And you see them arguing and you see them talking and they shouting back and forward and not necessarily doing things that you would even be able to do in your CARICOM or Commonwealth meetings. How do y'all feel about that as young leaders in the country? Would you one day get in that Parliament and start carrying on like they just carry on?
You better answer.
Thank you once again for having us. We're privileged to be here with the Bahamian people. As young people, I feel that the way of life, how we adjust and how we do things has changed. Mm-hmm. So not to say that what they are doing now wasn't fine in their time, or that they don't feel passionate about what they're doing. But with education comes a lot of diplomacy. So we know that it's not the right way and
Yeah.
not the thing that they should be doing. So looking at it, no, and standing up.
Let me ask you a question. Would your meetings at Commonwealth, you're the Commonwealth Youth Ambassador, when you meet with other ambassadors, would that even work? Would you even be able to get functionality out of that kind of discourse?
Well, I mean, discourse is dialectics, right? So, well, according to the system we function in Westminster, we look forward to see that passionate argument so we can get informative positions from both the governing party and the opposition. I personally find it refreshing. I don't think I would even maybe pay attention to politics as persistently as I do if it wasn't as passionate as it is.
Yeah, but do we get any product out of that? Does that yield anything? There are some who suggest that our legislature is not functioning. It is not really passing laws that affect the lives of the daily Bahamians. The things that we need to get fixed aren't being done.
The productivity would come through the legislation's execution, but the productivity of the House should be in information being disseminated to the ordinary citizen. Now, how some people would regard as information, whether it be slander here or jeering there, or maybe, and through there we sift out the actual facts.
Right.
Okay.
That could be debatable.
Well, why do we have to sift the facts?
No,
why we got to extrapolate facts out of the foolishness?
In supporting Mr. Forbes' point, if we're relating to the average Bahamian, then we need to take it to the ear of the average Bahamian, and that's what we look for. In our conversation, it's gossip. You know, I know you're going to get, but even in the classroom, you have to find creative ways to deal with students at their level. So the average Bahamian, how do they disseminate this information? What are they looking for? Are they interested in the fact or the scandal? Is the question that
Well,
should be asked.
okay. Let's break this down and make it very simple. The only person, and you know, I can get hit for saying this, but it is what it is. I've seen Alfred Sayers present at Parliament. That is a preparation. He takes time to prepare himself. He gets himself ready. He presents. Now, Alfred Sayers ain't the most exciting man to listen to in the world, but he is prepared. You can hear that his research is done.
Right.
I'm informed by that presentation.
Right.
I watch Mr. Mitchell at times. It's almost up to the same standard. But I don't see nobody else. I don't know of any other parliamentarians that give me the kind of information I think that you two have to bring to the Commonwealth or the CARICOM meeting with ambassadors. For example, you would have just been to the CHOGM meeting, both of you, that was in Trinidad, and you had to come prepared to talk, prepared to discourse, prepared to get stuff done, to legislate. I've been in charge of legislatures before, and it takes a lot of work. And what I see them doing isn't yielding the kind of progress that I think get us anywhere in terms of legislation.
I mean,
not to mention that half of them got cabinet jobs,
so
they're busy. They're doing other stuff. So how do we get anything out of that based on your experience?
Well, in defense of some of the parliamentarians, though I usually don't take that position, is they have to be representative of what their constituents would like them to say in the House. So they have to play a delicate balance of, one, having an informative position, and two, yielding to the demands of those they represent. So that is always a tussle. What we do in CARICOM or in Commonwealth as ambassadors is kind of like the same thing. But we try to find more of the unilateral positions that our country hold and then present it in a more informative way, in a more diplomatic way, to put it best. So the situation isn't so comparable because you're dealing with a situation where there's dissension and disdain, and you have a lobbying of parties, a lobbying of interests. But in the Commonwealth, the CARICOM forum, it's more, we come behind, we represent our entire country. And we represent those main or those staple concerns that young people our age have.
Okay, let's not belabor the point. Next issue. Branville McCartney. He is representative, supposedly, of young people in the Bahamas. He resigned this week from his cabinet position as Minister of Immigration. He was said to be the bright and shining star of the cabinet, although he is a junior minister. Your thoughts, your feelings, y'all are youth leaders. What do you say?
Well, there are varying comments on this issue of his resignation,
Okay.
and I don't know the full story.
Okay.
To hear the full story, I'd like to hear it from the horse's mouth.
Well, listen, we invite the horse to come on the show, and he didn't decide to come. He said he had some serious emergency that came up at the last minute yesterday, and had his secretary call me to tell me
Oh,
that.
that's so sad.
So we
But-
invited the horse, and the horse isn't talking for whatever reason.
But looking from the outside inward now,
Okay.
his future seemed bright and
Okay.
perspective, and I really don't know what the issue was, but as I heard on a lot of talk shows, you keep your ear to the ground.
Okay.
They're saying that there was supposed to be this mutiny now, and persons were supposed to follow, but that didn't happen. And
Yeah,
I felt that was an interesting theory to put out there. But at the end of the day, it does seem that he's remorseful for whatever reason. So
Okay.
it would seem as if it was more of an impromptu situation
Okay.
that he just decided to leave based on.
Yeah, I
having
mean,
hard
I
feelings.
would think that if you're going to resign from cabinet, now
Right.
most of the fellas, they just get fired from cabinet. But Mr. Ingram has quite a track record of these resigning ministers. He's had Sidney Corley resign,
Right.
Carl Bethel resign,
Right.
and now Mr. McCartney. Now, for
Right.
whatever reason, they're resigning. What I'm saying is, when you resign, you know what it is you resign for.
Definitely.
You know
Definitely.
what you can say after you finish resigning.
Right.
And you know when, the press is going to come. And I had a
Exactly.
member of parliament tell me yesterday, I don't quite understand why he is holding up on what he has to say. Just answer the questions. People are asking questions.
That's true.
You must have known what you
That's
were doing.
true. That's
As we
true.
look in, I guess we looking there, like you say, from the horse's mouth. But
Right.
Felix Bell would probably say we need to pay attention to what the cow said.
Okay.
If you saw his article on the frog and the cow,
Okay.
and he put it quite tastefully. He said, the cow told Branville to moo moo.
Oh,
Interesting,
Lord.
interesting.
I mean, in the conversation with the young people who I interact with, in the College of the Bahamas or my church institution, wherever I may find them, all I can say is the power of propaganda. I don't see so much where Branville McCartney has been the light or shining armor of the youth perspective toward progression or moving forward.
Okay.
Though I think we are impressed in the potential that he would have as a leading candidate that would be younger, that could possibly be the catalyst to open the doors for future young people who have political ambitions. But me personally, I think he's a nice person. He's been a good candidate in the party, but ultimately, I guess it boils down to a quote from I guess Niccolo Machiavelli, who said, "There's nothing more perilous to conducting the introduction of the order of new things."
Okay.
Because you have supporters, those lukewarm defenders, and you have for opposition those people who have done well under the old system,
True.
and so they'd fight to die for it.
Yes.
And I think that's what Branville McCartney has been met with. If it's
Yeah.
political suicide, it's yet to be seen. But
Okay.
we'll
Well,
find out.
I want to make note of this officially, just so that our viewers can see. We have a viewer, a lady by the name of Diana, who is a viewer from North Carolina. She's attending Duke University studying for a doctorate, I believe it in history. I'm not quite sure. But she called, and she's a womanist, and she said, this show has, too many men. I haven't seen any representation of women. And you are the first woman guest on Citizens Review. I don't pull punches. I just say what it is. You are the first woman to come on the show, and we thank you for being here. My question to you is, as a woman, as a up-and-coming mother, which you will be someday,
Someday.
Someday. Okay.
how do you feel about the Bahamas? How do you feel about raising children here? You're a school teacher. You teach at CV Bethel. Before I let you talk, I want to talk to my good friends at CV Bethel. I saw your principal, Miss Benaby. That is a woman of distinction because she did some good, this ain't a word, but she did some good principling when I was there last time. I mean, she handled that crowd of students very well. Also, the head boy and head girl, Cameron and Antonia. I spent some time at CV Bethel. I
good.
want you to know.
Evidently.
And then
That's good.
Aaron Hinsey, who is the president of the Young Men's Club.
Okay.
How you feel? You see the students every day. You talk to them. You interact with them. Can they read? Because people telling us they can't read. The average is a D. What? What are we to get from that?
Blame the teachers?
Education is a passionate topic.
Okay.
And literacy is definitely a platform that I hold, even being a volunteer on the Adult Learning Show.
Okay.
And you see it every day about our young people and where they're heading and the future of the Bahamas. And you develop this sense of pride and passion, even more so for Bahamian young people when you gain the exposure that's provided through the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture to allow youth ambassadors like myself to travel. Because you can't send all of the youth of the Bahamas, but what they are continuing to do, and I thank God that they haven't cut that program because we know with the budget. But what they're continuing to do is at least send a voice, send the eyes and send the ears, so that we can come back now and show what we've seen through our eyes and our ears to future young people. And to be honest, we are kind of in trouble.
Okay.
I don't like to be pessimistic about the Bahamas, but I got to keep it real.
Yeah, please.
When it comes to competing on an international scale, we need to buckle up. Yeah. We do. And the thing is, Bahamian students, we take a lot of things for granted.
Okay.
We have a good climate, and we're in a good situation, good location, but for some reason, we are not serious about education. We are not.
Before you finish that point, I want to come back to you when we come back from the break. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back here with His Excellency Dematheo Forbes, the CARICOM Ambassador for the Bahamas, and Her Excellency, Miss Alexander, the Commonwealth Ambassador, Youth Ambassador for the Bahamas. Now, we were getting into education, and like we said before, you're a teacher at CV Bethel. You teach 10th through 12th graders, am I correct?
And that is correct.
Okay. We graduate at a rate of, I think I heard 50%. What a person at LW Young, I think, told me that of the more than 1,000 students there, less than 100, and I think it's like 50 students are above 3.0. What going on?
Jeez.
What do we have as a system? What do we have as for education in the Bahamas? Are we educating, or are we, like they said in New Orleans after Katrina, are we just warehousing?
Well, that's a deep, very passionate topic. That's what Citizens Review is all about.
Please
Getting to the heart of the matter.
Yes.
We definitely need to be a bit more serious about education. But I think citizens who are not in the system, those who are not in the classroom per se,
Yes.
who don't relate to students one-on-one on a daily basis, need to be realistic with their expectations. And see, a lot of times, again, drawing back to the propaganda, we have some politicians who would, we talk about the D average and we're going to improve and we're going to do this and do that because it sounds good to the ear. And so we need now to come away from the hype and get into reality.
So they're giving us hype.
Of course.
All right. So what's the
hype
reality?
wins votes.
What's the reality?
The reality of it is that we need more. We need to be more serious about education. We have a new minister, Minister Bannister, and a lot of persons. We're very excited about his new initiatives because he's changing a lot of things. And I'm not making it so political to say that the government needs to do this or the government needs to do that. But a lot of politics have crept into a lot of our government offices over the years.
Okay.
That should not be there.
Here's another challenge. Mr. Forbes, our best and brightest are going off to university, some of your very colleagues.
Yes.
Going off to university, not coming back. And I mean, arguably, that's the ones who are at the top.
Yes.
So if they're not coming back, what do we face as a challenge? What are your CARICOM counterparts facing the same challenge?
Yes, they are facing the same challenge. I think the last reports from Jamaica was 75% of their
My
intellect
God.
is not returning.
Okay.
And so now we see the Bahamas creeping up slowly behind them. I
Okay.
think we're probably at 50% or 55%.
Yeah.
The real point behind all of it is, how do we provide the economic opportunity to sustain that type of intelligence? You know, a lot of people talk about our D average. Well, our D average is what maintains our #1 industry,
Okay.
tourism, which is providing cheap labor.
Okay.
You can't pay A students with 10 BGC, 180 base salary. You can't do that.
Okay.
So I could kind of understand why the government has been a bit hesitant.
So hold on, wait. But based on what you say,
Right. Uh-huh.
our #1 industry then is not tourism.
No,
Our
it's-
#1 industry is cheap labor.
Yes, sir.
Because we don't own the tourism product.
Why otherwise would we feel threatened by those who we would think encroach upon our home country, you know, and then provide a service that we
On
have
the
to
on the
compete
low
with?
level.
On the
jobs.
low level, of
Yeah,
course.
we don't get afraid when quote unquote foreign direct investments
No,
who
no.
seem to all look the same way
No, sir.
come to the Bahamas and take ownership.
No,
we
we
get
don't.
concerned when people from other countries that
Could-
look
could-
like us
Yes, sir.
come to take the low lying job.
Yes,
But
sir.
Okay.
I want to interject
Good,
here.
that's
I want us to
interesting.
keep in mind D is average.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? I mean, it's not a passing grade on an international scale, whereas we just acknowledge A to C. According to test and evaluation, a D is a pass.
Well, that
I'm not
wasn't-
saying it's acceptable.
D ain't no boss in my
No,
house.
I'm not saying it's acceptable, but I'm saying that's the average.
Okay.
So it's not to say that the whole country is failing, but you have to realize too that we have a lot of students who have issues as well, learning disabilities and all these other associated issues we're counting into that average.
Okay.
So can we measure the national average to say how are our students performing?
But the Ministry of Education is in charge of the means by which to measure. So if they want to take the students out with learning disabilities and take the students out who may be further disabled mentally,
Right.
and then measure the students who are
Okay.
supposed to be quote unquote normal,
Right.
it's up to them.
So that's what
why
I'm
don't they
saying
give us a
about
proper
being
average?
serious about
I still think-
education.
I still
Okay.
think it's a lose-lose situation, right? Because what we see happen in Barbados, where they have free education, where they have students who are performing, you see a high devaluation of education.
Okay.
Where you got parking boys and cashiers who got a bachelor's degree. Still don't got nothing to do. So
That's the
question
opposite
is-
problem.
That's the
Right.
opposite problem.
Okay.
So we advance education, revamp it, and still left with the same
You
problem.
calling for a national plan?
Yes, we need a national
Okay.
plan.
Well, I think-
An economic package.
I think when it comes to revising our educational plan, we need to start at the lower level and we need to improve in reading.
Okay.
Those are the reading and math, reading and numeracy skills is what I would look at. I'm not talking about where in Trinidad they pay for their students to get tertiary level education. I'm talking about we just want to graduate these students now. We have the National High School Diploma. Who can read?
But isn't that so? I mean, for us to be dealing with that. For example, I have a young cousin. He's 6 years old, and he can't read.
Okay.
He's in grade 1 at a school that I wouldn't
Don't
call the
name
name
it.
of the
No,
school
Please do.
because I'm a firm believer in the
Tell me after
idea
the show.
that the teachers are not the problem. The administrators, like Ms. Benaby, are not the problem. The students at CV Bethel or any other school, like Cameron, like Antonia, like my good friend Tyokan Forbes, they are not the problem.
Oh, he's a Forbes.
They're
good
willing
man.
to work. Yeah, he's a Forbes.
Good man.
They're willing to work. And children, you cannot blame children. My cousin come out of the womb ready to learn,
Right.
ready to learn
Right.
5 languages as statistics suggest.
Exactly.
But he's at this school, he's in grade 6, and he is performing at K4 level.
Mr. Ferguson,
And
know what I
at the
suggest?
top of his class.
I suggest you take a visit to the literacy department.
Okay.
Is where is it? In across from the CC Suite in Senior High School.
Okay.
I went there about a year ago to find out what is the literacy standard in the Bahamas. We still function under the Lawback system of literacy, which is probably established in 1918. Almost 100 years old, my brother.
Oh my goodness. we done make cars since then,
Yes, sir.
computers since then, all kinds of
Literacy
stuff.
has been so much more advanced since then. We have computer literacy, we have quantitative, documentative literacy,
Qualitative literacy.
qualitative, that that's not being applied to the standard of education in the Bahamas.
And then in other areas where we lack, we have cultural literacy challenges in the
Right,
Bahamas. We don't quite
definitely.
understand what
Definitely.
it is we got going on here for
Exactly.
culture outside of Junkanoo.
Right.
But okay, let me pose another interesting question. It came to me yesterday that I had a meeting with a young fellow. He was working in this office that I had to interact with. I don't want to call names. And in the office, he's seen as, he ain't got no sense. He going to one of these schools and this, that, and the next thing. In fact, on the weekends, I work with Justice Claire Hepburn, and I have my bracelet here on, the Tara Project. And we talk to young students, and we try to inspire them to want to get to know about the Bahamas, to want to be educated. And you look into these young people's face, and they are eager.
Yeah.
Some of them, some of them wayward. Some of them off to the side and they ain't interested in all of that. But that's not the vast majority. And if there is a system that moves them in the direction of progress, I am certain that the same kind of pressures that get them to do foolishness, it's the same pressures that will get them to move in the right
Definitely.
direction.
I agree.
I
with
agree.
you.
So how come we can't formulate this? How come we can't come up with an education system
Right.
that moves? Why is it that we keep grandfathering in policies by the time as they get grandfather and they need a grandfather?
Okay. Well, keep in mind, too, that education is not just the ministry's concern. It's a holistic effort.
Okay.
And we see that, again, even when I relate, in your classes, you integrate different subjects.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, in religious studies, just today, I was teaching about the environment. And the students were like, I feel like I'm in biology.
Yeah.
And I showed them that there are times when you're in college and you feel, well, when am I ever going to use this subject? They all integrate. They all integrate. So education, educating a nation is not just for one sector.
Okay.
Because as we were stating on the break, I learned how to read at home.
Yeah.
And we're not going to point fingers and say the parents are to blame, the teachers are to blame, the students are to blame, or the ministry is to blame. But all of us need to come together and put our nation's youth, their life, be passionate about it.
Yeah.
Because, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, they are the future of the Bahamas.
that's
There
it.
are some persons who don't want to move aside. There are some persons who just want to keep them down. There are even some parents who want to keep their children young forever. That's a whole other segment.
All right.
But they're the way forward.
Mr. Forbes, you have the last word.
I don't so much care about how smart young Bahamians get. Seriously, right? What I really care about is what level of education we need to make he or she a good citizen. I think that's where the education conversation has been started. You have crime, delinquent behavior starting to come on the rise. So the question is, based on criminology statistics, that those who are educated make more sound decisions, as it relates to law and order,
Okay.
rational thinking, conflict resolution.
Right.
That's the area of education I'm concerned with, not necessarily chemistry, physics, biology,
right,
history.
right.
Well, there are some of us concerned
Right.
about that.
Yeah, I'm certainly not. Because
Okay.
what I want is an environment conducive for, if I have kids or my family and my loved ones, that they would feel protected, safe in their home without the need of having the arms or guns or police present. That's the level of education that it's losing its standard and that we need to revamp.
All right. Well,
To
ladies
conserve
and
it as
gentlemen,
well.
you heard it from the ambassadors, His and Her Excellencies themselves. Now, I'm titling them that. The ministry doesn't necessarily call them that. But we have to go to a break right now. I appreciated the conversation. Thank you for coming on the show, and we will have more women. We'll be right back. ladies and gentlemen, we're back. And I had to include two politicians, but they are what I like to call the rebel group of politicians. We have with us today Renwood Wells from the National Development Party and Omar Smith, the deputy leader of the Bahamas Democratic Movement. Gentlemen, thank you for coming to the show.
Thanks for having me.
The first question that's on the minds of Bahamians is McCartney's resignation. Now, you two represent parties. I haven't heard from your parties as to what your perspective is on the resignation of Mr. McCartney. Let's start with you, Mr. Wells.
Well, it's an internal issue for the F&M, but to a certain extent, but it's also an issue for the Bahamian people because he was a cabinet minister. I feel Mr. McCartney, in his own professional judgment, decided that he could no longer serve in the cabinet for various reasons. There's all sorts of rumors out there as to why that is. And he made a judgment based upon where he wants his own political future to be, that he would step back from the cabinet.
Okay.
I find it a little ironic. He said that the country is going in the wrong direction. But he also said the Prime Minister is still the right man for the job. I think perhaps it is incumbent.
Quite makes sense about that, right?
Yeah, but there again, I think Mr. McCartney is going to have to explain the kind of duplicity in his statement, why it is that he would have said that and said the other thing. So I think persons are going to be asking some questions.
Okay. Mr. Smith, what's your take? What's the BDM's take?
Well, the BDM's take is that's the F&M's business.
Okay.
In addition to that, it shows that there is definitely divisiveness within the cabinet of the Bahamas. And obviously, Mr. McCartney has seen it fit that he no longer can move forward with Mr. Ingram's agenda.
Yeah, but Mr. McCartney is saying that Mr. Ingram is still the best leader for the Bahamas, the best leader for the F&M. How does that compute to both of you? You pointed out the fact that the statement is kind of contradictory. How does that make any kind of sense?
Well, it doesn't. It quite honestly could make sense in that he may feel that he may be the best man at this particular juncture.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that he isn't making mistakes at this particular time, or it doesn't even mean that I may not agree or he may not agree with what Mr. Ingram is doing.
Now, in the analysis of the responses, our team here at Citizens Review pointed out something that was particularly odd. If you go back to I think it was 2004 when Colin Powell resigned from the Bush's cabinet. The response from the Democrats was not, hey, Colin Powell, why don't you come on over and join the Democrats? The response was, the Bush administration is unraveling, the Bush administration is coming apart, his style of leadership is a problem, Colin Powell is a sensible gentleman, he's stepping out, this speaks badly for the Republicans. Why is it, and I don't know if this is your response, why is it that the PLP seems to be more interested in getting Mr. McCartney over than criticizing the government as the opposition party?
Well, I think it's, I don't know if it's necessarily in the Bahamian politics. We've had persons who have moved back and forth across the political divide from time to time.
But it doesn't seem like Mr. McCartney is at all interested.
No,
in
and he said so because he's resigned from the cabinet, but he did not resign from the F&M.
Okay.
He's still an F&M member of Parliament.
Okay.
And therein, I think, for me personally, from what I see, I think therein lies the answer for the PLP who is asking for him to come over. He's saying that he's still an F&M member of Parliament. He may not feel comfortable under the particular leadership of the Prime Minister in regards to what's going on in the cabinet or even what's going on within the ministry in the Department of Immigration, per se. But he may feel that the Prime Minister, as Omar said, is correct on other things, not that he's not making a mistake in this particular area. So the PLP can call for him, but that's a decision.
Don't you think what are y'all interested in inviting Mr. McCartney to join your parties?
Well, listen, Mr. Ferguson, I'll tell you this much. Bahamian politics, like Mr. Wells said, has a history of people crossing over. And I think, and it also has been successful for the people who have crossed over and left political parties. I mean, even as recent as Mr. Maynard and Mr. Nemore go into the F&M. So, it has bolstered the party that has received these people going over. I guess it didn't work out for Mr. Nottage, probably because he was just going back home.
Well, he went back to the BLB and he's been quite successful.
He got a minister. So, so the fact is, switching parties, has been good for in terms of historical of the Bahamian people. But to answer your question with regards to us, the BDM, and Mr. McCartney. I'll tell you something. We understand something. Mr. McCartney, some would argue, was one of the most effective cabinet members in Mr. Ingram's cabinet.
Some argue that.
Some argue that. But you have a problem in our country where you have people who, especially of another generation, who believes that there's a different way of doing things. And when that difference in opinion clashes against the status quo, the establishment which Mr. Ingram stands for, there are problems. And you have two choices. Either, if you're subservient, either you suck up to it and you bide your time, as Mr. Ingram, I think, hinted to Mr. McCartney.
Interesting.
Or you do what Mr. McCartney did. You stick to your convictions, and you live by your convictions. And in this case, some people believe that he may die by his convictions.
Okay, I mean, but he may die by his convictions because he's not seeking to explain to us what his conviction is. He is yet to explain to the Bahamian people in any sort of expansive way why the resignation. All that he has given us is a press release that doesn't really make it clear.
Aaron, let me explain something to you. If he wants a future in the FNM, do you think it's in his best interest to come out and say, well, Mr. Ingram did this?
Well,
Mr.
it
Ingram
wasn't
did
in his
that,
best interest
Mr.
to
Ingram-"
resign in the FNM.
Well, it may not have been it might have been better than staying. Maybe, some of this. Let me tell you what is a rare thing in politics. And when I've listened to some of the talk shows and some of the comments people have said. They said, you know what? Oh, Mr. McCartney, he left, or Brand left. It wasn't the right thing to do. He didn't, he hurt his political career. But you know something, honestly and truly, if you came into politics for the right reasons, if you came into politics to serve and to make a difference, and you are serving under someone that goes against your convictions, goes against what you believe is right, you have to wake up in the morning. And you know what, to be honest, I would suggest that some politicians, they have no problem waking up in the morning looking at themselves because they know what they're into. But some people get into this because they believe in what they're doing. They want to do what's right. And for me personally, I could never go and do things in terms of my country or compromise myself and look at myself in the mirror. I have children I have to live for and to justify.
Mr. Wells, it was brought to my attention yesterday in a conversation. A gentleman said, listen, Peter Ingram, as we call him on this show, has dealt with this kind of situation before. Peter Ingram started off dealing with Lyndon Pindling himself. Then got to Mr. Christie. In the mix of that somewhere, he got Algernon Allen, Pierre Depuch, Tennyson Wells, all persons who attempted moves at leadership in the FNM, aside from Christie and Mr. Pindling.
Sure.
This can be some serious stuff for Mr. McCartney. I doubt that he even has the kind of support that Mr. Allen had when he started to make moves for leadership. What do you think about that?
Well, there's two kinds of support. There's support within your party, and then there's support outside.
Yeah, but support outside is a myth. They say, the people backing you, but we can't even get a good group of Bahamians to sit in Rawson Court and protest against the parliament.
But I would say this to
the people is an idea.
But I agree with that to a certain degree, but I disagree too, because remember now, the FNM brought in Mr. Ingram. Specifically, I think the best thing that happened to Mr. Ingram was when Sir Lyndon fired him. Okay. And he was out there in the wilderness championing from what Bahamian people considered championing their cause at the time. Because he was insane as a champion. Yeah, it didn't last too long for Christie. Christie went back. But the fact of the matter is by him doing that, what happened was the Bahamian people say, hey, here's a fellow we could repose some confidence in. The FNM saw that. And the FNM at the time said, let's bring this fellow in as leader. It bolstered their opportunities and their chances. Mr. McCartney obviously have that kind of clout among the people. If you hear the people calling it now, people within his political, people within his from his rally that he had where he wanted to give the state of the constituency and his view on his job performance at that time, there was an awful lot of persons who showed up at his rally. And here, I'm not here to carry Mr. McCartney's water. I'm just answering a question. But the fact of the matter is if you have that kind of external support, sometimes it can generate a kind of internal support in your party too.
Okay.
But Mr. McCartney is going to have to, if he doesn't have that, begin to develop that kind of internal support, because what's going to end up happening, and I think this is a very precarious position for him to be in.
Okay.
He says he's not going to resign from the FNM. He has to be nominated by these persons to run again. Absolutely. If he's nominated by them and goes through the next general election, and quote unquote, if Mr. Ingram should be the leader going in and ends up being the prime minister again, is he going to then serve in Mr. Ingram's cabinet?
Buddy, I
You understand what I'm saying? Or is he going to sit on the back bench? If he sits on the back bench, then that a whole other slew
I
of
don't think
other
he has,
things comes
I don't think
comes
he
to
has
mind.
much plans of sitting on the back bench.
But I would say this. I think that, as Omar has said, what needs to happen in this country, we need to mature. You see, we need to have that kind of maturing that this kind of incident has brought. Okay? In the cabinet of the country, we still like to, when persons want to quiet you, they say that ain't in the Westminster system. You ought to keep your mouth shut. You ought to carry out the instructions of the individual who's first among equals, which is the Prime Minister, or quote unquote the instructions of the cabinet. We need that kind of openness to where a person can do his or her job. I think the perception is that Mr. McCartney was attempting to do his job, okay, carrying out the laws of this country. And at each turn, he was sort of stifled. That's the perception. Okay. And given that under his own professional understanding, he said, I can no longer continue in this way.
Listen,
Mr.
Bramwell,
Smith, I want to give you the last word. Go
yeah.
ahead.
I'll just say this, man. The bottom line is this. You know, Mr. McCartney, we know he is an ambitious young man. He has aspirations for higher office. We know what that higher office is. There's not much higher you can go from being a cabinet member.
Exactly.
And I'm sure this is in the plan for him to get to that position. I'm not sure that as a result of the move that he made, that things are going according to plan. Basically, we just hope that in his actions, that he didn't write a check, that his political career can't cash. And that's the bottom line.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here on this show. We hope that Mr. Granville McCartney didn't write a check that his political career can't cash. I suggest to you that the history of Mr. Ingram says that that check can bounce. But I don't know. We'll be right back after these breaks. Good evening, welcome back to the show. It seems like every week the response to these citizens' arrests get more and more excitable. For example, Bahamas Press noted to us that they got requests from their readers to post the citizens' arrests on their website at bahamaspress.com. And we've had people on Facebook inquiring about the arrest for next week every week. I'd like for our viewers to get involved and send in your suggestions. You can visit us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and join us at citizensreviewtv.com. Or send us an email at citizensreviewtv@gmail.com. We're interested in what you, the citizens, have to say about the show and your suggestions. How can we better serve you? Every week, we're going to read off some of the more interesting comments we get on our Facebook, email, or Twitter. This week we have Christina on Facebook. Christina says, I absolutely love the show. Aaron is bold, direct, and fearless. Being easy on the eyes doesn't hurt either. Oh, Christina, thank you very much for your kind words. Dario says, this show is the best thing on Bahamian television, period. Unbiased, straightforward, and a breath of fresh air. The host is an articulate, smart, and well-prepared on the issues and holds back on nothing. Aaron does not wear his politics on his shoulders. I hope you stay that way. This show has been what we've been missing. Dario, I promise you, sir, we will not wear politics on our shoulders in this show. It's a little bit too heavy. Richard says, great show. I look forward to continued independent and vigorous analysis. Richard, that's what we intend to do on this show. All the people who wrote in, we'd like to thank you for your continued interest and support in the show. We look forward to continued interaction with our viewers. And in the upcoming weeks, the citizens' arrests will be from the viewers' suggestions. So send them in, citizensreviewtv.com. Now, this week, the citizens' arrest is for young people out there in the Bahamas. And all other people of other ages too, but particularly young people. We're all looking for the next leader of the Bahamas. We have a few fellows on the political scene who seem to want to call themselves leaders of the Bahamas and want to step up to the challenge. But The problem is not many of them get a chance to make that strive towards leadership, to make that separation from the pack, if you will, and step in the right direction. However, one guy got his chance and he took the opportunity. He did what he thought he had to do. That man is Granville McCartney. But Mr. McCartney, that's why you're this week's Citizen's Arrest. You had the perfect opportunity to make your stand, say what you got to say, and say what you mean, and mean what you say. To position yourself as the next possible leader of this country. Mr. McCartney resigned this week, and the explanation don't make no sense yet. If you're going to be young and you want to run the country, your first step towards leadership got to make some kind of sense. My brother, you lock up. You can't tell me in one mouth that Peter Ingram is the best leader ever. And in the next mouth, you get stifled. You can't expand your political potential. Which one is it? Because if he's stifling you, holding you down, keeping you back, then he cannot be the best leader ever. That is that simple. To be young is not currency for greatness. You know how many young people in this Bahamas, we just talk about it, going through these D-grade schools and ain't got no proper sense? Youth is not currency. To simply be young is not a suitable argument to be placed in the leadership of a country. The argument for leadership is not one based on age. The reason people make these age arguments is because of Peter Ingram and Paul Christie. They making people of that age look bad. And it ain't because people of that age don't have no sense. I know plenty of people in their 60s and even in their 70s who could run this country quite well. Our problem is with Peter Ingram and Paul Christie themselves. But that's just spilling over into making old people look bad. Maybe the old people should rise up themselves and put Peter Ingram and Paul Christie out, since they're making you look so bad. Anyway, listen, young people, youth and exceptionalism is what will carry us over the hill, not just being young. My ma used to tell me, what you think we got you in this house for? For pretty, eh? Get to work. Mr. McCartney, we don't have you in our parliament for pretty, my brother. When you say you come in to do an interview, show up for the interview. When you say you want to resign, tell us what you got to tell us. Tell us what's really going on. Because when you don't, you leave it to us. And we will speculate because we want to know what really happened. And I done hear all manner of things. So all I can conclude is, although they say Papa, Peter Ingram, running around here like old people say, looking for his pipe and it right in his mouth, he may be just right about this one. We're looking for our knight in shining armor, or our dame in shining armor. We're looking for Noah to steer the ark through troubled waters. We need a light in the midst of darkness. And I submit to you that Mr. McCartney only light skin. He's not that light, because he certainly wasn't no great source of illumination with that resignation he turned in. But like Mr. McCartney, I'm young too, and we have time. So get your act together, my brother. Anyhow, I know they can try to kill me for this one, but like they tell me in church, we are but dust, and to dust we shall return. So until then, we got to say what we got to say. Can't carry it with you, so you might as well let it out. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our Citizens Arrest for this week. Send in your comments at www.citizensreviewtv.com. Let us know what you think. Have a nice week.